The next morning he had woke up with her nude form wrapped up in his arms and had been surprised when she had told him that she didn't want anything else from him and was perfectly fine with the casual encounter, as she would not commit to another relationship as her heart was still with her departed family. Naruto had understood, and the two had parted on good terms as he'd headed to the airport and hopped back onto his private plane. At the moment he was on his way to Salem, Massachusetts, as he'd gotten word that Clarion the Witch Boy was on the hunt for Dr. Fate. While he had no use for the Witch Boy, he could use the aid of Dr. Fate. He'd heard much about the Lord of Order, and he was hoping he could help him with a way home. While he doubted he would be able to return immediately, just having a way to do so known would allow him to set a plan in motion. Closing his eyes at that thought, he decided he could get a bit of sleep while they traveled to their destination. Within the Hidden Leaf Village, the copy ninja Hatake Kakashi sighed as he entered the dusty confines that was Naruto's apartment. He, like many others, had often questioned why the blonde kept the place, as he hardly ever ventured to the place since he'd been granted access to the Namikaze family home. Naruto himself had never answered the question, though the common belief was that he kept the place so that he could remember where he came from and in a way keep himself humble. The complex itself was now fully refurbished and fully occupied, as many people had wanted to live in the building that their newfound hero had once called home. The fact that Naruto owned the building from after being literally tossed the deed by the previous owner who'd wanted to be away from the demon's influence always managed to amuse him, as he was now raking in cash monthly from people who just a few short years ago wanted nothing to do with him. That, he mused, was one of the problems of living in a village like Konoha. While the village itself was peaceful for the most part, and they were gifted with great weather nearly year-round, the village infrastructure left a bit to be desired. Because the village populace was made up mostly of civilians, one's reception by the villagers was usually based on their usually biased and uneducated opinions. He himself had been forced to live throughout the entirety of his remembered childhood under the stigma of being the son of a man who'd saved his comrades and thus abandoned a mission. Because of the repercussions of such a thing, due largely to the actions of the villagers, his father had drunk himself into a depression and committed suicide. As a result, Kakashi himself had lived for a long time believing that the rules of the ninja were the most important things in life. Those beliefs had been challenged by those of his teammate Uchiha Obito, who in Kakashi's first mission as a Jounin had sacrificed himself to save himself and their teammate Rin, gifting Kakashi with his Sharingan eye, which had been snatched out by Madara during the war. After that, Kakashi's perception of reality had shattered and he had never actually been able to pick up the pieces. For years he'd simply gone through the motions of living life, especially after the death of his sensei during the QB attack. He joined ANBU and had gone from mission to mission, improving his skill and raising his legend, yet all the while hoping to run into someone who could in fact kill him, and in doing so reunite him with his team. Knowing of exactly what he wanted to happen to him, he had opted to not even bother getting to know Naruto when he was a child. Sure, he had looked out for him and protected him, but always from the shadows. He had never wanted the child to get to know him and bond with him when he was looking for death, and would just end up breaking the bond with his actions. Yet lo and behold, in the end he'd gotten no choice, as he'd become the boys' Jounin instructor. Of course, having not even wanted or even applied for the job, he had initially just decided he would fail the team like he had all the others the Sandaime had stuck him with. This one, however, had passed, if barely so that option had gone out the window. Still, he had stubbornly stuck to his initial decision, and had as such not put in the work necessary to make them an effective team. Despite that, they had weathered the storm, and though all had made separate decisions and gone their separate ways, they had become living legends known collectively as the Neo-Sannin, the apprentices of the original legendary three that had been taught by Sarutobi Hiruzen himself. And he was given the credit by the civilians, as he'd gotten them all to a level where the legendary ninja would seek each one out to train. Of course, such a thing wasn't true in the slightest, but none of them had ever said such a thing. Sasuke had of course done himself no favors in abandoning the village and seeking out the Snake Sannin for power, but some of the civilians had even come up with a romanticized version for that. Some nonsense about a secret mission given by the Godame herself. Sakura had become one of the village's most beloved due to the things she'd done in the hospital over the last few years. Naruto, however, had become a symbol of power to the villagers, a living embodiment of the will of fire that the Sandaime Hokage had once preached about. Not only his strength but his kindness, the fact that he could be so forgiving to people who had once wished him harm had made a huge impact on the village populace. So much so that even others that had once been unfairly judged were being given second looks by the villagers who'd already been proven wrong once by the blonde wonder himself. Shaking such thoughts away for later, Kakashi made his way through the apartment, which if not for the layer of dust within would look as if someone still lived within its walls. Remembering Sasuke's last words to him within the prison, he moved to the refrigerator, and after wrapping his hand around the handle for the freezer door, pulled it open only to wince as he did as a small prick hit his hand. Pulling away from the now open door, the copy nin regarded his hand and could see a small pinprick where a dribble of blood was coming from the inside of his right ring finger. Frowning beneath his mask, he looked up in time to see that the entire back wall of the freezer was now inscribed with a seal that he could see was only just settling from its appearance, most likely coming into visualization due to a blood trigger, which was why he'd been poked. Annoyed though curious at the precaution taken by his blonde student, the copy nin set to work clearing out the trays, racks and ice cream bucket that had been inside and setting them to the side. As he did so, he reached over to the seal on the back wall, and after smearing a bit of blood from his still bleeding digit, was not surprised by the plume of smoke it caused. When it cleared, he was holding within his hand a piece of parchment, while two more seals appeared, one on each side of the freezer. Pulling his hand out of the freezer to read the note, he couldn't help but chuckle as he did. "Hi sensei, if you're reading this, one of two things is going on. It's either A, your birthday, or B, something gone wrong. Hopefully it's the former, so happy birthday. In the seal on the right is my present. Gigi told me some things, so I figured you'd like it. On the left are the ones from Sakura and Sasuke. Truthfully, I think I got you the better one, but I think you'll like all three of your gifts. See you at the party." Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke, the original Team Kakashi. Chuckling despite himself, the silver-haired jounin reached forward to the seal on the right, and after smearing a bit of blood and dealing with the resulting plume of smoke, felt another weight settle into his hand. As he pulled his hand out once more, he found himself holding a sheathed blade nearly a foot long, which he recognized as a tanto. However, unlike most that he'd seen, this one was straight, having not even the slight curve that was usually developed with the blades. However, it was the marking on the sheath that truly caught his attention as he focused on it, his hand actually shaking slightly as he beheld the sight of the 4 diamonds connected into the shape of a shuriken, the Hatake family crest. Shakily, he removed the sheath and unleashed the blade, showing a gleaming silver in color. Turning as if in a trance so that he was facing away from the refrigerator, he channeled just a small bit of chakra into the blade and slashed into the empty space, watching transfixed as the streak of white light followed the path of the blade. Unbeknownst to him, a single tear escaped his newly gained left eye at having his father's legendary blade repaired and returned to him. He wondered absently if this was how Naruto had felt when he himself had gifted him with the Hiraishin kunai that Minato had given him. Sheathing the blade and placing it on the counter, he made a mental note to get himself a harness so it could reclaim its spot on his back. Moving back over to the freezer, he frowned as he had to bite into his thumb and draw blood as the small wound his ring finger sported had healed, a leftover gift from the time Naruto had shared his bijou chakra with the troops during the war. Drawing the blood from his finger, he swiped it over the seal on the left this time, which instead of being placed on the wall had been placed on the bottom. As the smoke cleared, he could see 2 glass jars sitting there, within which, floating in liquid, were 2 eyes, both of them red with 3 toe markings. As he spotted them, he blinked as he found himself standing with a dark void, a familiar place, as he remembered sitting within this void and speaking with his father when Pain, or rather Nagato, had nearly killed him. He quickly turned as there was a flare of chakra behind him, and in an instant a vortex appeared from which appeared a figure who landed in a crouch. The figure soon stood to his feet, showing a ghost from his past that stood at 5 feet even and had short, spiky, black hair and black eyes. He wore a long-sleeved blue uniform with metal plating on the part that reached the back of his hands, as well as a blue jacket with an orange collar and trimmings. The jacket was fastened to the rest of the outfit by 2 buttons on the collar, and he knew without even looking that it had the Uchiha clan symbol on the back. "Obito!" exclaimed Kakashi in shock. "Well, it's about damn time!" exclaimed the youth. "What's going on?" questioned Kakashi. Long story short, I programmed a genjutsu into my eyes to activate the moment yours met them. I thought this would have happened during the war, but I didn't expect Naruto was powerful enough to handle that mess like he did. Anyway, I don't have a lot of time, so I'll get to the point. Even though we don't share a blood connection, you've become my brother, so I'm giving you this last gift. Don't wallow this time, live your own life, find a girl, have kids, and we'll all get together and talk in time. Until then, however, I think it's time you became the person whose name resounds even throughout the foreign lands. Sharingan no Kakashi. Kakashi blinked again and found himself once more within Naruto's dusty apartment, and looking into an empty freezer. The jars were still there, only now instead of a pair of Sharingan eyes within them, they held a pair of regular dark brown eyes, while within the sockets of his own eyes a pair of triple Tomo Sharingan eyes spun in place before they settled and faded to regular dark black eyes. Despite this, he could still feel the power that the two eyes gave off and noticed that the chakra drain that he'd once suffered from was now nearly non-existent. Collecting the glass jars, he sealed them away within a scroll he kept on hand, and after restocking the freezer, grabbed his tanto and left the apartment. Elsewhere, the members of the team stood within what appeared to be nothing more than a regular quiet neighborhood. Two of them were absent. Wonder Girl was undergoing some training on Themyscira with the Amazons, and Robin was with Batman doing their dynamic duel thing in Gotham. Superboy, while welcome on Themyscira, had opted to leave and return to the team, as he could tell many of the Amazons had felt uncomfortable with his presence on the island. This left the assembled group of Superboy, Aqualad, Artemis, Miss Martian, and Kid Flash in attendance, all of which were currently in their civilian attire. Holding out a golden key which he'd been given by the team's watcher Red Tornado, Aqualad turned it, causing a click to sound out before a new building came into view where there had once been empty space. Impressive, came a voice, catching their attention. Turning towards it, they were all greeted to the sight of a figure standing atop of a building's roof. He wore black pants loose around his thighs while tightening around the shin area, which was covered by a pair of dull back shin guards that nearly blended seamlessly with his pants. Over his torso he wore a sleeveless black top with orange stripes going down the sides of the front, while 3 slim belts wrapped around him with several pouches attached. His forearms were also covered by forearm guards of the same dull black color as his shin guards, and his head was covered by a hood. Finally, covering his face was a white and orange mask, the orange designs giving it the likeness of a fox, while over his shoulder the hilt of a sword could be seen. "Kitsune, what are you doing here?" questioned Aqualad, recognizing the voice after a few moments. "Same as you, I'd wager. Trying to locate Ken Nelson," said Kitsune, leaping down from the roof and landing lightly in front of the group of teens. "I hope you guys came more prepared than you look. My sources say Clarion is also on the trail," stated Kitsune. "Who?" questioned Kid Flash. "Clarion the Witch Boy. He is a Lord of Chaos. From what I understand, in the days of the Justice Society he was one of Dr. Fate's greatest enemies," stated Aqualad with a frown. "I suggest we go in before Clarion finds him then," stated Superba. "The League will have questions for you," stated Aqualad, turning to regard Kitsune. "That doesn't mean they'll be answered. Besides, they'll have to find me first. I'm interested in seeing if their skills match their egos," stated Kitsune as the group entered the building doors, which closed and vanished behind them. Where'd the door go?" questioned Superba, asking the question on everyone's mind. "Greetings," came a new voice, getting them to spin around to see a holographic image of Kent Nelson standing before them. "You have entered with a key, but the tower does not recognize you. Please state your purpose and intent," requested the hologram. "We are true believers, here to find Dr. Fate," stated Wally before anyone else could speak. The hologram frowned before fading away. For a moment everything was silent, as Wally also frowned before creaking was heard and the floor gave way from beneath them towards what looked to be a pit of lava. Acting quickly, Artemis pulled a grapple gun from her jacket before firing into the earthen walls and swinging towards it, grabbing Aqualad along the way. Miss Martian had grabbed Wally and flown off to the side, while Superboy slowed his fall by grabbing onto the earth wall he was nearest to, digging a trench as his momentum carried him, only to come to a halt at least after his feet had fell into the pool of water. Yelling out in pain, he was surprised when a hand grabbed his own and pulled him a bit further up, allowing him to see Kitsune somehow perched on his feet. Looking back down, he was just in time to see the last pieces of his boots flaking away. Those were my favorite boots. This Nelson guy better be worth it, stated Superba, his eyebrow twitching, having trouble maintaining altitude. I'm so hot, stated Miss Martian, her form slowly sinking. You certainly are, stated Wally from his position in her arms. Wally! Yelled an aggravated Artemis. Hey, inches above sizzling death, I'm entitled to speak my mind, stated Wally. Why didn't you fly? Questioned Kitsune quietly to Superbo. I can't, stated Superba through gritted teeth, causing Naruto to frown beneath the mask. You should be able to. Both Superman and Wonder Woman can fly. However, considering you take more after him, it may just be that your body hasn't unlocked the ability at this point, stated Naruto after a few moments of thought. My physiology and Ganes are susceptible to extreme heat. We must climb out quickly, stated Aqualad, which Naruto heard thanks to his sensitive ears and filed away for later. Hello, Megan. We never truly answered the question. Red Tornado sent us to see if Mr. Nelson and the helmet were safe, called out the Martian. For a moment it was silent before a slab of stones slid over the lava, allowing all of them to drop to the floor, much to their relief. This platform, it should be red hot, but it's cool to the touch, stated Aqualad, placing a hand down to the floor. Don't worry, Megalicious. I got you, stated Wally, wrapping his arm around a sagging Gan. Enough. Your little impress Megan at all costs game nearly got us all barbecued, stated Artemis, pushing Wally off Megan and back into a wall. When did this become my fault? Exclaimed Wally. When you lied to that whatever it was and called yourself a true believer, exclaimed Artemis. Wally, you don't believe? Questioned Gan. Fine. Fine. I lied about believing in magic. But magic is the real lie, a major load, stated Wally. Wally, I studied for a year at the Conservatory of Sorcery in Atlantis. The mystic arts created the skin icons that power my water bearers, stated Aqualad. Dude, you ever hear of bioelectricity? Hey, in primitive cultures, fire was once considered magical, too. Today it's all just a bunch of tricks, stated Wally. You're pretty close-minded for a guy who can break the sound barrier in his sneakers, stated Artemis. That's science. I recreated Flash's laboratory experiment, and here I am. Everything can be explained by science, stated Wally. Not true, stated Naruto, making his presence known to the group once more. While it is true that science does have its applications, and many of them can be positive, as evidenced by our friend here, started Naruto, pointing a thumb at Superboy as he moved forward, the truth of the matter is that there is much that your science cannot explain. Your people simply like to believe themselves powerful, and use science to explain things they cannot understand. Case in point, I believe Aqualad wants to test your theory, stated Kitsune, motioning to Aqualad, who was still crouched on the ground. Dude, wait, the backdraft will roast us all alive, exclaimed Wally, seeing Aqualad about to lift up a panel. The Atlantean teen ignored him and lifted the panel, and instead of heat and flames greeting them, they were met with cold snow. Do you ever get tired of being wrong? Questioned Artemis before leaping through with the rest of the group, following after to be met with dark skies and snow-covered mountains on the other side. Well? Questioned Artemis with a raised eyebrow as she turned to face Wally. Ever hear of string theory? We're in a pocket dimension, stated Wally. No, pocket dimensions are small, like storage compartments. That was time/space manipulation on a greater scale than I ever thought was possible, stated Naruto, smiling beneath his mask as he was definitely on the right track. Hey, what's that? Questioned Megan, pointing over to where a cane could be seen floating in front of them. Maybe it's Nelson's magic wand, stated Wally, rolling his eyes and darting over to grab it at the same time as Artemis did. I got it, spoke both at once, only for the cane to glow, not allowing either to release it before blasting off into the air and vanishing with both in a golden flash. And that, boys and girls, is why we don't grab floating objects when searching for sorcerers, stated Naruto. While Naruto and the others were forced to trek through the snow, Artemis and Wally had appeared with a golden glow within a labyrinth of stairs that formed in all manner of directions. Looking around, they spotted a trio of figures, one of whom they recognized as Ken Nelson, who was held with rope tied around his hands. One of the others was a scraggy-looking boy with long, thin limbs, a thin neck and an angular face. He has black hair in a mop-top style with V-shaped bangs and devil horns rising over the ears to points slightly above the top of his head. He also has arched eyebrows and sideburns that taper to a point along with long, sharp, black fingernails. He was dressed in a black suit and tie with a white shirt with a long, stiff collar. The final figure was a man with black hair pulled into a slick ponytail with sideburns and a goatee beard with his narrow face and brown eyes. He wore a white button shirt that was left open, mostly allowing his hairy chest to be seen along with a gold necklace. He wore black pants with a golden belt buckle with a stylized on it along with a pair of black gloves. Finally, he wore a single earring in his right ear, which threw Wally for a loop as he knew that men sporting only a single earring should wear it in their left ear. One on the right only symbolized that he lived a different lifestyle. "Abracadabra," said Wally upon recognizing the man. "Well, will you look at that?" said Kent, just as his cane started glowing, engulfing the elder in the same golden glow before he began to float, and shot over to it before anyone could react. As he landed, he wasted no time grabbing hold of the cane, which finally allowed Artemis and Wally to release it while the robes binding Kent quickly came undone. "In here." As he said this, Kent stood and pointed the head of the cane to a wall just behind the two teens. The wall glowed before it slid open, allowing the trio to jump into the new compartment before it closed behind them. "No, no, no. I want that helmet. I want it, I want it, I want it!" exclaimed Clarion, lifting his palms towards the closing doors, red energy beams firing at them only to hit regular stone as the doors faded away. Meanwhile, inside what they now realized was an elevator, the trio watched quietly as they were lifted up several flights to their next destination. "I'm Kent Nelson, by the way," stated the old man. "No duh, OW," exclaimed Wally after Artemis popped him. "I'm Artemis, Miss Manners here is Wally," stated the girl. "Well, Artemis, we're up against an opponent with tremendous mystic power," stated Kent. "Abracadabra?" Flash proved he uses futuristic technology to simulate magic. "Guys all show and no biz," stated Wally with a scoff. "Right you are," stated Kent. "He is?" questioned Artemis in surprise. "Abra is a charlatan. But Clarion, the witch boy, the kid with the cat, he's an actual Lord of Chaos, the ultimate enemy of a Lord of Order like Dr. Fate," explained Kent. "Right, you're a Lord of Order," said Wally, clearing unbelieving of such a thing. "Oh no, not me. I'm just an old coot Fate used to put on. At least until my wife Inza convinced me there could be more to life." "Ah, she was a real pistol, that Inza," stated Kent, taking out his pocket watch to view a picture of his late wife before putting it away. "Anywho, Clarion's after the helmet. If he gets his sticky little mitts on it, he'll turn the planet into his own personal playground of pandemonium." As Kent said this, there was a ding as the elevator reached its stop, allowing for its occupants to get off. As they exited the elevator, all they could see ahead of them was a giant golden bell, much like one could find in a clock tower. Only this one was blown up to massive proportions and was of course made of gold. As they approached, Kent stopped, looking behind them and upwards as a rectangular doorway appeared behind them. As it did, the forms of Superba and Aqualad came falling out to land with a crouch Atlantean on top of Kryptonian, while Gan came floating down, and lastly Kitsune appeared landing within a crouch. "Well, at least one of you came dressed for work. Friends of yours?" stated Kent, eyeing the masked teen before turning to Wally. Yet before he could answer, both had to dodge a ray of blue energy that Abracadabra had sent at them from the tip of a wand from the next platform over. "Friends of yours?" retorted Wally as he leapt out of the way of a second blast. Never one to take being attacked lying down, in a quick motion Kitsune had sent a shuriken flying towards the duo that managed to strike the wand in the man's hand and carry it along as it carried on with its momentum. Kent meanwhile had approached the bell, which rung out with a gong, and entered along with Wally. Seeing them go, Clarion flew over and entered from the other side, with Kitsune was quick to follow after entering just before the bell lost its glow, forcing the others to remain behind. Kent and Wally appeared with a golden flare standing beneath a golden helmet which was floating in the air atop of a building. As he reached up for the helmet, Kent was met with a blast of red energy that struck him in the chest and knocked him back into Wally, who managed to catch him. Pushing himself to his feet, Kent began chanting before slamming his cane to the ground, managing to create a golden force field just as Clarion sent another blast of red energy their way, which struck it harmlessly. As Clarion went to fire again, he was suddenly sent flying as Naruto made his presence known by nailing him with a kick to the face. Dynamiku Entori, dynamic entry. As he landed from his kick behind his mask, Naruto couldn't help but smile in remembrance of Konoha's taijutsu expert. Having seen the man perform the move so many times, it was easy to replicate. "Who the hell are you?" exclaimed Clarion as he recovered, floating a few feet in the air. "This is your one warning, brat. Leave. I have business with Dr. Fate, and will not allow your presence here to interfere," stated Kitsune. In response to this, Clarion sent out a blast of red energy, only to gawk in surprise as in a single motion the masked teen had drawn his sword and cut straight through the blast, the two halves flying in two separate directions before exploding with small bangs while the masked teen calmly sheathed his blade. Enraged, Clarion began flinging a barrage of blasts at the masked teen, who responded by running through 3 quick seals before taking a breath and exhaling. Futon, Kami Orosher, wind release. Godly wind from the mountain. With his exhale, a large vortex of wind shot from his mouth, sucking up the energy balls and returning them back towards Clarion, who at the last moment managed to create his own force field that stopped the attack. Naruto didn't have long to watch, however, as in an instant he jumped away, just barely dodging a beam of red energy that nearly struck him from behind. As he landed, he was once again forced to take evasive action as several bullet-like blasts came towards him. Finally deciding enough was enough, Naruto surprised Clarion as he began actually running towards him, dodging through the energy blast as he went. In seconds he'd closed the distance, and before Clarion could try a new strategy, or even flee, Naruto had summoned a Rasengan, slamming the spiraling sphere of blue energy directly into his midsection and sending him tumbling away. However, instead of staying down, Clarion climbed to his feet, showing that he was actually no worse for wear. "What the hell? That should have killed you," stated Naruto in shock. Before either of them could continue, there was a golden flash behind them, and both turned to see a new figure had made his appearance. The figure wore a uniform which consists of a golden helmet that covers the entirety of his head, excluding the ears, along with a long, high-collared cape, fastened with 2 large buttons beneath which is a blue shirt with a golden oval set in the chest. He also dons a large golden belt with a circle in the center, and deep blue pants with golden boots. "Damn it! That kid actually put on the helmet!" exclaimed Clarion in anger before changing targets and flinging a barrage of blasts at the helmeted man, who responded by creating a golden energy shield. "Give it up, Nabu! Order went out of style in the 20th century," stated Clarion as he kept up the barrage. "This battle is pointless. You sought to take the helmet before it claimed a host, but you are too late," stated Dr. Fate. "Shut it, you old fart!" exclaimed the witch boy. After he said this, he created a pair of pillars from the building they were standing upon, sending them slamming into the gold-wearing sorcerer on 2 sides and smashing him between them. Before he could celebrate, however, the glyph that Dr. Fate was known for appeared on the construct before it exploded outwards, freeing the helmet-wearing hero, who fired a ray of golden energy of his own at Clarion, whose form was seemingly swallowed by the energy. Naruto, however, watched as he appeared behind Dr. Fate, and blasted him in the back with his own red energy that resembled lightning. As he hit the ground, Fate managed to recover, but not before Clarion arched and sent another blast at him, this one in the shape of a large demon head. Dodging the blast, Fate turned as it came back at him, and created a shield to block the attack, only for Clarion to blast him in the back again. Once again forming his energy bullets, he sent them after Fate, who created a circular shield, only for it to begin to crack after the 3rd attack and shatter after the 5th. Pressing his advantage, Clarion blew out a stream of red energy in a way that it appeared he was blowing fire, only for Fate to take flight to avoid it. Undeterred, Clarion turned, allowing the blast to chase the helmet-clad hero, and seeing his moment, created a pillar of red energy which Fate flew headfirst into, that forced him to hit the ground hard and bounce twice before settling. "You're out of practice, Nabu. And that pathetic host's body, 0 affinity for the mystic arts," stated Clarion. As he said this, he raised both of his arms up, causing the clouds above to gather with the sound of crashing thunder echoing before a bolt of red lightning came shooting down from the sky. Fate at the last moment managed to create a dome-like shield to protect him from the attack. "Oh, rainbow power! stated Clarion, clearly mocking the Lord of Order only for his attention to be drawn to his cat, who chose that moment to make its presence known. I am paying attention, you stupid cat. In case it slipped your notice, I'm winning, said Clarion. That was all he could get out before, much to his shock, the business end of a sword came shooting out of the front of his chest as the form of Kitsune appeared behind him, holding his blade and showing he drove it in through the boy's back in such a way that it cut through his spine and ribcage, appearing so that he could see the flat of the blade sticking out of his front. I believe the little fur ball was referring to me, said Kitsune darkly as he removed the blade to allow the boy to collapse. However, instead of collapsing, Clarion surprised the teen as he actually chuckled as the wound healed itself over as if nothing had happened. While Naruto was in shock at such a thing, Dr. Fate had been given all the time he needed, and with a single flare of his power created a shockwave that shattered both his own protective dome and also the lightning that had been falling down at him. It is difficult for a Lord of Order or Chaos to maintain a presence on the physical plane. I am bound to the helmet and use a human host. But that is not your way, stated Fate, dodging around several large energy balls Clarion flung at him by taking flight before firing a blast of his own energy at Clarion, who reacted by creating a rock wall from the ground they were standing upon. You're babbling, Nabu, stated Clarion, allowing the wall to crumble. Am I? As he said this, Fate sent another blast of golden energy outwards, which Clarion created a circular shield to block. However, instead of hitting the shield, the energy flew straight past Clarion and his shield and struck Clarion's cat, which bounced twice after the hit before skidding to a stop thanks to the wall of the building they fought upon. Tickle! I can't believe you would assault a defenseless pussycat, stated Clarion. Pussycat where? Exclaimed Kurama, making his own presence known. Damn it, Kurama, how many times do I have to tell you they broke up last year before it sticks? No more music videos for you, Ero Kitsune, thought Naruto. We both know that creature is no cat, witch boy, and without your familiar, you have no anchor in this reality, stated Dr. Fate, unknowing of the small distraction within Naruto's mind, words which were proven true as Clarion's form began to flicker in and out of focus. Bully, killjoy, geezer! Exclaimed Clarion, resulting to name-calling as he had not gotten his way. Fate responded by sending another blast of energy his way, which Clarion only barely managed to dodge by jumping into a portal he managed to create that dropped him next to his cat, allowing him to pick it up before both he and the cat vanished into black and red energy. So all I had to do was kill his cat to get rid of him. Such a lame weakness, stated Kitsune, sheathing his blade. While I appreciate the aid, Solarian, tell me how you escaped the confines of your planet, stated Fate. I was flung to this dimension from my own due to a misfired seal. I was hoping you could help me find a way back, stated Kitsune. It is unnecessary for you to cross dimensions. Your planet exists in this one, in a portion of space that was sealed off so that Lords of Chaos such as Clarion would not take advantage of an entity that sleeps on its surface. One of the Lords of Creation, stated Dr. Fate. You mean the Shinju, stated Naruto, already beginning to put the pieces together. If you mean the God Tree, then yes. After the creation of all, the Lords of Creation went into seclusion, and the God Tree chose its favorite world Solaris as its home. When the Lords of Chaos plotted to steal the fruit of the tree, we sealed that entire section of space away in order to prevent a repeat of such a thing. You most likely bounced off of a dimensional wall due to this misfired seal and thus was able to land on this planet, stated Dr. Fate. Is it possible for you to send me back? Stated Naruto. At this point, no. My current host is insufficient for such a task as he lacks the mystical aptitude required to do such a thing. However, in time I shall possess the ability to pierce the veils. In the meantime, my physical self will check up on your world, perhaps even petition for the release of your world from its seclusion. You hold a fair bit of power in your body, and even a fraction of the power held by what you call the Shinju, stated Dr. Fate. At the last of these words, Naruto went still, eyes wide beneath his mask. While he had not outright said it, the fact that he could apparently sense Kurama's presence within him threw the teen for a loop. At this point no one, not even Talia, knew of his companion, and he was regularly sleeping with her. To think that this man, no, this entity was so powerful that he could tell such a thing right off the bat worried him. He was thankful for his mask, which masked his emotions well, as at this point he was sure he couldn't, though he had much he needed to let Tsunade in on, and as such simply nodded his understanding. Then our audience is over. We will meet again in time, stated Fate before Naruto was engulfed in a golden glow and vanished. Much later at Mount Justice, the base for their team, Wally could be found standing before a wall approaching a case which held a collection of souvenirs from their various missions. These souvenirs included an eyeball, the mask of one of the cult members of Cobra, one of Artemis's arrows, the mask of the League of Shadows member Cheshire, and now the helmet of Fate. Of course, at first Naba had been unwilling to let him go, however the spurt of Ken Nelson, which had also found himself within the helmet as well as Wally was, had managed to convince him to let him go, as he wasn't the right candidate. Artemis had given him a hard time about keeping the helmet when he clearly still didn't believe in magic, but like all things that annoyed him, he managed to brush it off. Wally! Came a new voice breaking him from his thoughts. Turning towards it, he was greeted to the sight of Batman approaching him. I heard your team had a run-in with Kitsune and the two of you spent some time separated from the others. What can you tell me? Questioned the Bat, getting straight to the point. Well, he's good with a sword and seems to be able to manipulate wind. He also has no problem using lethal force. He tried killing Clarion twice during the conflict. Once he even ran his sword through him from back to front out of his chest. He actually came seeking the aid of Dr. Fate to return him home, as he thought he was from a different dimension. Apparently, though, his entire section of space is supposed to have been sealed off by the Lords of Order a long time ago. Long story short, it seems he's just looking for a way home. Fate told him he'd try something, so in the meantime he's just waiting to hear from him, stated Wally. Did Dr. Fate mention what planet he comes from? Questioned Batman. Called the place Solaris. Said it was sealed away because one of the Lords of Creation lives there and Kitsune only got out due to some kind of fluke. Informed Wally, causing Batman to frown, already trying to solve the puzzle without all of the pieces. Back in Konoha, the members of the retrieval team were gathered within the Hokage mansion along with Tsunade, Shizen and Team Kurenai, even though the latter group was not going on this adventure with them. Many of them were also worried due to the presence of the Uchiha, and though they did not voice it, none of them would shed a tear if he happened to die during the mission. Are you lot ready? Questioned Fukasaku from his position in front of the large seal, several fundamental changes having been applied to it since its last usage. I need you all to realize that this is a one-way trip. We managed to stabilize the seal, but it will only work once, but it will drop you exactly where it dropped Naruto-chan a few days ago. You'll be in a desert that they call Egypt, very similar to Kaze no Kuni. From there you'll have to find Naruto-chan on your own. He travels a lot, so that may take some time, stated Fukasaku, getting understanding nods from all six of them before Tsunade cleared her throat. Each of you were given an A and BU mask that you are to use any time you make any kind of obvious moves. According to Naruto, there are many so-called heroes and villains in this world, so a few more masked people won't stick out as much. While this is by no means an official move for any of you, I provided the mask so that you could move anonymously. While under the mask you will respond only to the moniker given to you and are never to use actual names, understood? Stated Tsunade. Hi Hokage-sama, answered all at once. Also included in your care packages were bingo books. Each of these were customized for this world, listing many of the heroes and villains of that world, so you are not caught off guard, said Shizen, having personally supplied the books. Many of them had already leafed through the books, and while much of what they saw they found hard to believe, they had quickly adapted to the weirdness in a way only shinobi could. Sakura and Ino had also both talked about several of the boys that had been depicted in the books, and were looking forward to the trip for more reasons than they should. So how exactly will this work? Questioned Niji, eyeing the giant seal he currently stood on. We've tweaked it a bit to act similar to the seals used for the Hiraishin no Jutsu. However, this is a one-way trip because we just don't have the power to use it twice due to the distance you guys are going, stated Fukasaku. And seeing no one else had any questions, leapt off from his perch on Akamaru's head to land just in front of the seal. Seeing this, each of the 9 members of the group placed on the mask they'd been given as all of them slipped into mission mode. Running through a short seal sequence, the Elder Toad Sage flared his chakra before placing his webbed hands on the seal. For a moment the seal began to glow brightly before a flash of light blinded everyone in the room, which cleared to show those who'd been in the seal no longer present. I really hope they'll be okay," stated Hinata, not liking the fact she'd been left behind for this adventure. "Does anyone else feel like the really fun stuff always revolves around Kakashi's team?" questioned Kiba as he and his teammates left the mansion. "They have Naruto," stated Shino, as if that was all the answer that was needed, which in truth it was. As they walked off, however, all of them wished the best for those who just left, and hoped the mission wouldn't prove itself too troublesome. During the course of his life, Naruto had tried very hard and mostly succeeded in pushing back and ignoring any and all negative feelings. Growing up as he did in Konoha, he had become well acquainted with negative emotions: sadness, depression, hatred, you name it. He had most likely felt it long before his 10th birthday. These experiences and the near fall to the path of the emo had been what had initially gotten him to create a metaphorical mask by which he hid all of his truly negative emotions. This in turn gave birth to the Naruto that his friends would recognize as a happy-go-lucky idiot. Due to the constant usage of his mask, however, he had unknowingly locked away those feelings, creating a second persona, or a dark Naruto. It had only been during his training to master the fox's chakra that the two halves had reconciled, and he had begun to experience a full range of emotions. During the war, he hadn't had a lot of time for these changes to fully set themselves in place. Now, however, he found that they had, and while he found his likes and dislikes expanding, he had come to realize one thing: he absolutely hated Gotham City. Unlike other places he had visited while traveling this world, he found Gotham was a place he simply despised more than anything he had encountered to this point in his life. The air quality was horrible, and for a kid who'd grown up within a forest he could judge air quality. It was much too loud, the people were far too rude. Hell, they were worse than New Yorkers, which was saying something in itself. Worst of all, however, was the crime rate. Despite the businesses that called the place home, Gotham was known for crime above all, and despite the length of time that had passed, the Bat had hardly put a dent in it. He was especially hating his newest mission, as it had him on a long-term undercover assignment in said hated city. At the moment, he could be seen seated within a wooden chair wearing a pair of beige slacks along with a dark blue blazer. Beneath the blazer, a simple white dress shirt could be seen with a red tie keeping it in place. Glancing down at his left wrist, the watch he wore revealed the time as 8:15, meaning he'd been sitting here waiting for 15 minutes. And if there was anything training under Kakashi caused, was a dislike of being kept waiting. The watch itself was a gift from Talia, a Cartier Astro Tourbillon, the strap of which was made of brown leather. "Mr. Uzumaki, he will see you now," came a voice breaking him from his thoughts. Standing from his seat, he soon found himself following behind a perky brown-haired woman who was of Hispanic descent, judging by her surname Acosta. He wondered absently if she was related to Javier Acosta, but decided it didn't matter as he currently had no business with the Acosta crime family. Finally, after about 2 minutes of walking, he found himself entering an office where a man who looked a bit similar to Raz due to his style of hair was sitting behind a desk. Mr. Uzumaki, have a seat," stated the man, with Naruto doing just that. "My name is John Hammer. I am the headmaster here at Gotham Academy," stated the man, his voice a droll tone that would probably annoy even Shino. "I've been going over your files from your previous instructor, and it appears you have an above-average intelligence. However, on your entrance exams only half of the questions were answered," stated the man. As he said this, however, the man found Naruto leveling a bored gaze his way that would impress even a Nara. Seeing this gaze, the headmaster opted not to ask the question on his mind. After all, the questions that the blonde had answered had been all of the harder ones, and he'd gotten those all right. As such, he just made a note to have his teachers encourage him to put in a bit more effort. "Now then, as you have opted to live off campus and not within the dorms, I would advise you to be on campus by 7:45 as classes start at 8 o'clock sharp. Also, despite the fact that you are not a first-year student due to the fact you are a transfer and not initially a resident of Gotham, we have assigned you a guide. You can pick up your schedule and locker information from Ms. Acosta." Standing and leaving the room as the man finished talking, the blonde made his way out of the office, where he found the woman Acosta and another younger female apparently waiting for him. The female in question was young and stood at maybe 5 feet 8 inches with long red hair and blue eyes. She wore a dark blue sleeveless sweater over a white dress shirt secured with a tie and a blue skirt that stopped several inches short of her knees. "Mr. Uzumaki, right on time," said the assistant as the blonde made his approach. This is Barbara Gordon. She'll be your student liaison for the time being. In the space station that acted as the headquarters of the Justice League, a closed-doors meeting was currently being held. In attendance were the founding seven: Superman, Batman, The Flash, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, Green Lantern, John Stewart, and Aquaman. Also in attendance were Green Arrow and Black Canary. "Has there been any word on Kitsune?" questioned Wonder Woman after a lapse of silence that had gone on too long. "No, he seems to have gone underground since his conversation with Dr. Fate," said Batman. "Yet the League of Shadows is clearly active," stated Black Canary, her tone indicating she was referring to the latest incident where Cheshire, a young Shadows member, had attempted to assassinate Lex Luthor, who'd been acting as a mediator between two warring states. "Most of the assassinations have stopped, though," retorted Green Lantern. "True, from what we've been able to uncover so far, the only assassinations that they take part in are when the targets are either corrupt politicians or some other person of influence. But never anyone actually innocent," mused Green Arrow. "What's up with that? Are they only killing bad guys now?" questioned Flash. "They're cleaning house," stated Batman, drawing the attention of the room. "The corrupt politicians weren't the only people to have been killed lately. Maxwell Lord, Morgan Edge, Parasite, Bizarro, Deadshot, Killer Croc, Black Mask, Angleman, Mr. Element, and Hector Hammond have all been killed in the last 2 months," said Batman, shocking all of them. "Weren't most of those guys locked up?" questioned Flash. "Yes, which is why we didn't notice. They were killed in prison in one way or another. Others apparently died in their sleep, but further investigation revealed they'd ingested a rare but dangerous poison, the source of which only grows in Tibet," explained Batman. "You said cleaning house? What are your thoughts?" questioned Superman, breaking his silence for the first time. "It's about Kitsune. According to Kid Flash, it was confirmed by Dr. Fate that he is from a different planet. We also know that he's searching for a way back, however he is now heir to the demon," said Batman. "What does that mean?" questioned Wonder Woman, having not had as many confrontations with the League of Shadows as the Dark Knight. "It means Ra's al Ghul has chosen him as his successor, and Kitsune has accepted." "You think Kitsune's taking the League of Shadows with him when he leaves?" said Green Arrow. "So why the sudden activity then?" questioned Flash. By the time the day came to an end, Naruto felt his hatred of his current mission rising. Today had been more like being subjected to torture than anything else. He had found himself bored 15 minutes into his first class, and as such had spent the rest of the time restless, though he vowed to learn some genjutsu so he could sleep and no one would notice. He'd only had a few incidents that day, however for the most part one look from him was able to end things. After all, these were spoiled rich kids playing at being tough, and he'd grown up on the south side of Konoha and didn't even need to mention the fact that he's an S-class ninja. He'd run into Artemis a few times in the halls but hadn't spoken to her, as he'd been a bit busy. Unfortunately, his looks had done from him here what they'd not done in Konoha and had attracted the attention of a lot of the girls in the school. Being the naturally friendly person that he was, however, instead of ignoring them, he'd spoken with quite a few, which only made the following larger even if he turned down all of the offers for dates he'd gotten. Of course, those were the bold ones. Others would just giggle in their little groups whenever he passed by them, and the shy ones would blush and turn away. Looking up from his thoughts, he found himself catching sight of his escort for the day. Along with her was a man with dark red hair, though it was beginning to change colors due to his age. He stood at perhaps 6 feet 3 inches and wore a pair of black slacks with a matching sports jacket left open. "Barbara-san, a moment of your time," called the blonde as he approached the duo. "Hi Naruto, did you enjoy your first day?" questioned Barbara as the teen approached. "It was different than I'm used to. Anyway, I saw a bit of your martial arts prowess while you had gym earlier," stated the blonde. "Oh, you caught that?" questioned Barbara, blushing in embarrassment. "I did. You have a bit of skill. It's all still incredibly raw and rough, but you have potential. If you'd been raised in my home village, I have no doubt you'd be able to shatter someone's ribcage with one punch, and for what I've learned of this hellhole of a city, that would be a good thing," said the blonde before handing the girl a card, much to her confusion. "When you want to get serious and bring out that potential, head there. You'll get all the training you'll need," stated Naruto before turning his attention to the man beside her. "You are James Gordon, correct?" questioned the teen, getting a nod. I am new to this city and your daughter is one of the few people I know. I may call on her to show me the sights of this city, otherwise your hospitals may soon be overcrowded," stated the blonde. "Why'd you say that?" questioned Barbara before her father could comment. "I've been here 2 days and I've already broken 4 arms from would-be muggers. It would be easier for everyone if I knew where I could and where I shouldn't go," explained Naruto evenly. "I see. I suppose we can arrange something with your parents," finally spoke James Gordon. "I'm an orphan. My parents were killed the day I was born. Unfortunately, I was saddled with what you call a guardian when I came here, as apparently legal age here is older than what I'm used to," explained Naruto. "Really, what is the legal age where you're from?" questioned James. "I was considered an adult at 12, though I won't be legal for another year," spoke the blonde, though his eyes soon wandered over to the other side of the street as he followed another figure who was stumbling his way down the street. "Sloppy," stated Naruto, shaking his head in disgust. "That's not nice," said Barbara, following the blonde's gaze with her own. "I don't mean his appearance, I'm talking about his tradecraft. If I'd ever tried picking pockets in such an obvious manner growing up, my hand probably would have been cut off. The only reason he's getting away with it is that there are so many people walking the street that bumping into a few seems to be a regular occurrence," explained Naruto. "Anyway, I have to get going. I have to run some errands before heading in." "I'll see you tomorrow, Barbara-san," Gordon-san said Naruto with a slight bow before turning and making his leave. "You like her?" came the voice of the fox, surprising the blonde. "Don't be ridiculous," retorted the blonde quickly. "You used that etiquette training Tsunade forced you through," remarked the fox, was all Naruto could come up with. "Well, she's a looker, I'll give her that much. She's not in Talia's league and way off from Hinata's, but she has potential," remarked the fox, sending a barrage of images at the blonde that almost caused him to trip. "Baka Iaro Kitsune," roared the blonde mentally. Touching down on the shores of her home, the Amazonian princess, known to the outside world as Wonder Woman, took in a deep breath of clean air and felt a small smile slide across her beautiful lips. Her home island of Themyscira had been created by the 5 female Olympian goddesses Hestia, Aphrodite, Artemis, Athena, and Demeter thousands of years ago after the demigod son of Zeus, Heracles, attacked and desecrated their original home along with his band of followers. The initial attack had left the few men who'd been around killed and the vast women to be enslaved, killed, or raped. They had only been saved thanks to the goddesses who, in an effort to protect their chosen people, had created the island for them to live and blessed them with immortality. She herself had not been one of those women. In fact, she had not been born until around 50 years ago. Hera, the queen of the gods herself, had descended upon Themyscira and sought out her mother Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons. Aware of her husband's infidelity, and that he had, after the Amazon queen had approached the woman and offered her a deal, knowing that the war god Ares had been plotting against them, had informed the Amazon queen that in return for allowing the Sky King to have his way with her for one night, she would put a stop to Ares and his plan of conquest to the Amazons. Hippolyta had not answered right away. Instead, she'd sought out the counsel of the patron goddesses of the Amazons, knowing that the Olympian queen was a jealous woman by nature, and that she would not have the best interest of her people at heart. In the end, Hippolyta had agreed with the goddesses' terms and would end up giving birth to the only child born to the Amazons. When she was born, she had been blessed by all 5 of the goddesses, and as part of the deal had been even blessed by Hera herself. Of course, she had not been told this truth until she had first left the island nearly 4 years ago, instead having been told she had been fashioned out of clay and brought to life in that way. "Back so soon, princess?" called a voice, snapping her from her thoughts. The speaker was a woman with long red hair that fell almost to her ankles and wore a white chiton that reached only to her knees, along with a pair of brown sandals. She was currently lying down in the grass looking up at the sky. "Artemis, aren't you usually training at this time, sister?" questioned Diana as she approached her. "I decided to take a little break." "That daughter of yours packs a punch," stated Artemis. "She actually managed to hit you?" questioned Diana in surprise, though with a bit of pride. "Lucky shot, but she caught me in the stomach. Last I checked, Philippus was going to start her weapons training," said Artemis. "Hello, ladies," called a new voice. Turning towards it, the 2 women were met with the sight of a man who wore a pair of white cargo shorts and a t-shirt of the same color with a pair of brown sandals. Had they been in the outside world, Diana knew she'd have given him no mind. However, here in Themyscira the sight of a man was rare. In fact, the last man to set foot on the island had been Superman, and that had actually been due to special circumstances. Lord Apollo greeted the two women as they stood to their feet. True enough, the man before them was Apollo, Greek god of the sun, light, medicine, music, poetry, archery, reason, and prophecy. Among the male gods of Olympus, the man before them had always been the biggest supporters of the Amazons, and had blessed Diana with a phenomenal healing factor as a baby. No need for formalities, ladies, especially to you, dear sister, said Apollo, allowing the two of them to relax once more. It is a surprise to see you, brother, said Diana with a smile. True, I don't stop by as often as I used to, but you're always gone now, and I do not wish to upset your people with my presence, stated Apollo with a shrug of his shoulders. So you came by to visit when you realized I was here? Questioned Diana. Not this time, dear sister. I actually needed to speak with your mother, brought some matters to her attention. However, I did happen to meet with your daughter after we spoke and gave her a checkup, explained the god. How is she? Questioned Diana, getting Apollo and Artemis both to smile at her motherly concern. Clean bill of health. Her body, however, is an amazing specimen. Anyone else would have missed the problem she did have, but I've run across Kryptonians before, studied medicine on their planet in fact, so it was a simple thing for me to fix the few problems, said the man. Problems? Questioned Artemis as the girl looked fine to her. Due to her rather special nature of creation, she wasn't aging at all. Also, her body was not converting the sunlight she absorbed correctly. I merely fixed those few issues. She will age like normal when off the island, and her powers will grow with age, I'm sure, explained Apollo. Brother, if it is not too much trouble, she has a brother, can you look him over? Questioned Diana. That I was going to do. Before that, have you thought of names for the two of them? When I announce them to Olympus, I cannot call them Wonder Girl and Superba, said Apollo. Well, her brother has recently chosen the name Connor Kent, the surname in honor of a fallen hero, said Diana. Thought she found it ironic that he would take Superman's own surname without knowing. Connor Kent, a good name. Connor is historically speaking a strong name, said Apollo. As for my daughter, I was thinking about Donna, said Diana, causing Artemis to actually gasp while tears gathered at her eyes. Something wrong? Questioned Apollo. Donna. It was the name of my younger sister. She fell in battle 20 years ago, explained Artemis. She was my best friend. I hope you don't mind, said Diana. No, you honor me and my sister. The name is a good one. May your daughter be just as kind and as brave a warrior, said Artemis before standing and excusing herself. Elsewhere, Kal-El, otherwise known as Clark Kent, and Superman hovered within the skies of his own hometown of Smallville, Kansas. At the moment, he was out of uniform and instead wore a pair of gray slacks and a white dress shirt, the top two buttons removed and tie nowhere to be seen. The sleeves of the shirt had been rolled up, allowing for his muscular forearms to be seen. After the meeting on the watchtower, he had decided to head home and just take some time to relax. He feared if he had stayed as Superman any longer, he would probably go insane. Across from him, a young girl could be seen hovering in the air, positioned as if she was lying on her stomach. By appearance, one would think that the girl was about 14, and she had long blonde hair that fell to her mid-back and wore a pair of dark blue jean shorts with a white shirt. You're an idiot, stated the girl after a lengthy silence that had descended on them. Seriously, I tell you all that and all you can say is that? Questioned the man of steel. What do you want me to say, Kal-El? Questioned the girl, positioning herself so that she was now floating right side up. The humans got scared and made a mistake. It happens. But this is a good thing, Kal-El. You and I are the last pure-blooded Kryptonians alive. You have taken up guardianship of this planet, and I respect that, but our responsibility is to our own people. Eventually the two of us would have had to consummate in order to preserve our race. The humans have stumbled upon an alternative. Misguided as they were, they have done you a favor. I can understand you being upset they have betrayed your trust, but you'll just have to be more careful in the future, said the girl. How can you just accept it so easily? Questioned Clark. It's simple logic. You forget I'm older than you. I had the benefit of being raised by Kryptonian standards and with a higher level of education. I was a member of the Science Guild for nearly a year before Krypton's destruction. I had already discarded the same idea. I thought this planet lacked the technology for such a feat, said the girl. You don't think their creation was the slightest bit weird? Questioned Clark. I was brought to term in a tube, as were you, Kal-El. By the time a pregnancy lasted 3 months on Krypton, the fetus is removed and placed into a tube for further growth. It ensured a healthier child and placed less stress on the mother, said the girl.